In 2025, it feels like the market is zigging with AI, algorithms, and automations. How do we take our long-form content and chop it up into little pieces? How do we spam our contacts with AI-generated cold outreach? How do we fight to continue to get seen on the social media platforms, including day trading attention? All of this is designed for more noise, less trust, and honestly, I am tired of it. So for service-based business owners, if they're all zigging, I think it's time we zag. I think it's time we embrace an aggressively human approach to marketing and operating our businesses in 2025. What is the aggressively human approach? Let's dive in. So back in the summer of 2024, I was leading a Q&A call for my Deeper Business membership, and someone asked a question about how to use SEO to get found in the age of AI. My colleague Meg gave the answer about how the platform was changing. And then I chimed in at the end with or we can just take an aggressively human approach to marketing, because the way we are going to get our first clients and build up rapport and build up a network is by talking to other human beings. 6 months later, Meg comes to me and says, I would love to do a podcast called Aggressively Human. Are you in? And I said, yes, I'm totally in. So we have been working to build a podcast about the aggressively human approach. So let's dive into some of the principles of the aggressively human philosophy. One of our philosophies is conversations over contacts. For example, you might have an email list of 10,000 subscribers, woo, woo, woo. But are you having conversations with any of the people on that list? And are we going to fall for the myth that bigger is better? Maybe not for service providers. The second core philosophy is dialogue over monologue. So much of kind of capturing attention these days is shouting into the void, a one-way conversation that ultimately divorces you from having the real conversations that help you sharpen your expertise, understand what your clients are looking for, and be of real service in expanding your point of view between what you know. You can see all this dreck online. You don't know what to trust. But when you're in dialogue with somebody, you know that you are having a real conversation with a real human being on the line and getting as good of information as you can. A third philosophy is simplicity over systems. Instead of setting up these completely convoluted Rube Goldberg styles automations that keep you at arm's length distance from your clients, but that also tend to go wrong. Who hasn't spent hours setting up some fancy workflow only to see it fail? Who hasn't set up their funnel only to see no one go through it, instead of setting up these complicated systems and doing the hard work of avoiding dialogues and conversations by setting up systems? How can we embrace simplicity? And one of our fourth pillars is community over commodity. How can we treat our customers and our broader network as someone we're in a real human relationship with, instead of as a transaction? These are some of the philosophies that I want to embrace in 2025 and beyond. And these are philosophies that I've embraced in my business so far to date. However, we can't ignore AI, algorithms, and automations. We can't pretend that the algorithms aren't here and generative AI doesn't exist. We have to learn how to use these tools without being used by them. So the Aggressively Human podcast explores some of these foundational principles and pillars, and explores how we can use this technology without being used by it. What does it mean for service-based providers? And we're going to do that through conversations with me and co-host Meg, interviews with friends, colleagues, experts who have made some kind of aggressively human move in their business, or are grappling with how to use these tools, again, in a way that puts humans in the forefront. So far, we've had conversations about selling someone's agency because their business design wasn't designed for their life. We've had conversation about human-centered sales in community. We've had conversations about human-first podcasting, bringing your voice to the conversation. And I'm super excited we're going to have more conversations that are going to be applicable to experts and service-based business owners. You don't need a ton of traffic. You don't need a ton of views and eyeballs. You don't need a ton of bots on your email list. What we need to have is real human connection, real human dialogue, showcasing your real human expertise, but recognizing we're doing it while competing against AI slop out in the ether. So that's what we're going to be bringing to you in the Aggressively Human podcast. I'm super excited that we are going to start putting these episodes on YouTube. If you like this philosophy and you want to hear more, definitely subscribe to the channel. You will be able to subscribe to the Aggressively Human playlist and get all of the episodes that we're putting out that you can listen to as a podcast. We're super excited to have these conversations. And if you want to get a taste of the Aggressively Human podcast, listen to this audiogram from one of our most recent episodes. And I leave you with the last question we ask all of our guests. How are you being aggressively human in your business in 2025 and beyond? Look forward to hearing the responses.
I see so many people trying to like build a self-guided course for something where they've never taught it live, which is like the epitome. And they're gonna build it in a silo. They're gonna sell it in a silo to an audience that they've built in a silo with like a Facebook ad and some kind of one-way webinar with like the fake automated comments that like Andrea talked about when we had her on the podcast. But you don't really know whether it's going to work. And then people drop out and they don't finish it and you get disappointed because you never actually had a dialogue with your customers about what they needed, what messages were going to resonate. Did they understand? And you're just hoping for the best. And then it makes the time so long. It makes the time so long.
So I have been teaching this same curriculum, essentially 6 modules of the same curriculum for 9 years. And you know what? I still teach it live twice a year because I can see people's eyes glaze over. And then I adjust the way that I'm teaching it. And I think that moment, and if I say, I'm going to teach this on Tuesday at noon Eastern, and people show up, it's on their calendar and they have a level of accountability and they have a level of support of, hey, Stephanie, I know that you're at this live training. I'm going to adjust this training because you're the one in the room and you asked me this question about AI. So I added this slide to the training specifically based on your feedback from last week's training. Oh my God, I'm going to keep showing up versus I have to block off time to watch this in a void. You know, it's not just that I, as the creator, am creating in monologue. It's that I'm expecting my audience to listen in monologue and not get their questions answered and not have a space where they can, you know, just say, hey, this is working for me. Oh my God, right? Like I love my client success stories because we're cheering each other on. We start all our Q&As with like, does anybody have anything to celebrate? And sometimes it's like, I finally updated that page. And we're like, yeah, I did it. Because this shit is hard. It's hard to find the time, the energy, the motivation, and these sort of dialogue and community, which we'll talk about next philosophy episode. But me being in dialogue with my people is what keeps my retention high, is what keeps them coming back for 9 years, coming back and saying, hey, I know you, I learned this from you. I implemented to my extent. What can I do next? Right? Like that is what builds these deep relationships and not just, oh God, I have to run my sales funnel and put more money into my Facebook ads to get more people into this because my conversion rate is dropping. It's not all just an upfront cost.
And I think something you said there I just want to point out, this probably doesn't work when you are truly operating at scale in the sense of like the Justin Welsh has 200,000 newsletter subscribers and sells a one-time course purchase product. Like it's not designed, but we don't run a business like that. We run a business that operates with a different level of scale. And the way we get long customer lifetime value, it sounds very transactional, but the way we have longer relationships is because we deeply know people. And the only way you can know people is to have a dialogue. And that means we can tailor our content. My group program, I have like 80% of people who fit the avatar specifically, and then like 20% who have like a nonprofit organization, somebody trying to build up an organization, not a brand or not just them. I'm like, okay, well, this is what's going to apply to you. And this is what's going to apply to you. And this is how you're going to tailor this for your message. And if I try to put that in a self-guided course, the course should be real long and no one would take it. But because I'm in a dialogue, I can quickly pivot and, highlight for you specifically, these are the tweaks and changes I would make. Can't do that in a self-guided course because then I would limit the limited number of people who could participate because it has to be so specific and tailored to them and their particular, like that's why I would have to like talk to just coaches because, it would have to be so specific because I couldn't cover the areas of a nuance and gray that I can when I'm in a conversation with someone.
You can't generalize.
Yeah.
Or you have to generalize if you're not in dialogue. And I think you made a really good point, which is this is not something that would work if we had even 100,000, 50,000 people that we're trying to serve. So if that's the business that you want to run, you're going to have to, I don't know, listen to some of our other episodes or find other mentors, right? I have never wanted a list that big. I have never okay, maybe the podcast. I would love to have that many podcast listeners, sure. But I don't want to have to keep that many people in my brain. I would much rather build a business that feels deep, that feels intimate, and that feels like enough. And I think that these marketing experts, because we are seeing them having built these scaled businesses, those are the voices that are supposedly the thought leadership in our industries that are saying, this is how it needs to happen. You have to build not a business, you have to build a marketing machine so that you can serve 1 million. You can have 1 million Instagram followers. You can have 50,000 people in your funnel. You can have but God, no, I don't want that shit. I don't want that amount of responsibility. Personally, I don't want to have a team of people that I have to keep employed in order to keep the machine running. I don't want that. That is too much. Me and my assistant is enough. I can pay myself. I can pay her. I can feel really happy in my relationships with my clients and still make a living wage off of it. But I have friends who have had $1 million businesses. We talked to Andrea about her agency where she had, dozens of clients, not in the hundreds or thousands, but dozens of clients in her micro agency. And she was exhausted. And she was paying herself the same amount as she's paying herself now with an assistant because she scaled back to something that felt like a reasonable use of her time and her resources. So that's also a part of this is if you're in dialogue, you don't need to have a giant audience. You don't need to have a giant sales funnel because you can rely on the people who are in your community to give you the feedback that you need to improve your services so that they will keep coming back to you. You build loyalty when you're in dialogue.